Let's look at Anthony Ryder from South Lyon, Michigan, recently selected as the Lions 2020 Fan of the Year. He has a passion about sports broadcasting.
With the 112th selection in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Detroit Lions select Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver, USC. One pride, baby! Yeah!
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Detroit Lions video. Now, we have a little bit of news this offseason already, although we're very early into the offseason and hires haven't been made yet, signings haven't been made yet, and of course the draft is far away. The Detroit Lions have been opened up to a very new opportunity and a very unique opportunity in the NFL, as recently they were announced as one of the two teams that will be heading out to Mobile, Alabama to coach in the Reese's Senior Bowl. Now, the Senior Bowl is a yearly and annual event where college football seniors, guys that have played 4 years at the collegiate level, can go kind of have their own special little event and show off, do combine drills, do a full-on game scrimmage, and work with NFL coaching staffs. And it gives those players an opportunity to see what the NFL is going to be like and gives them an opportunity to maybe catch up to NFL speeds a little bit, and it gives those head coaches and it gives those coaching staffs an ability to get an inside look at practice traits, to look at mentality, to look at motor, and to get a lot of behind the scenes information that you're not going to get off of tape, or that you might not get as clearly from coaches and other, assistant coaches and positional coaches from the collegiate level when talking about these players. So the Lions have an incredibly unique opportunity this year to look at some of the nation's best seniors and look at some of the draft classes best talent and evaluate it a few weeks early and get a hands-on experience of how these players are going to play, how these players are going to work in practice, how they're going to train, the leadership qualities that they have at practice and in a game, and they're going to have a chance to play each and every one of these players in a scrimmage at the end of the week. With that being said, today I wanted to look at the Senior Bowl roster that the Detroit Lions have been granted. Now, admittedly, this is not the entire roster, as the safeties and the cornerbacks are yet to be announced. The DBs are the very last position to be announced, and as of recording this video, the DBs have not been released yet. But at the end, we will talk about a couple defensive backs that have been offered spots in the Senior Bowl and will very likely attend. So starting off with the quarterbacks, in my opinion, the Lions got a phenomenal opportunity to look at some of these young quarterbacks, as Malik Willis, the quarterback from Liberty, is their starting quarterback, or is the first quarterback that they were granted. Sam Howell, the quarterback from North Carolina, is the second guy on the roster, and then Bailey Zapp, the player that broke NCAA records for passing yards and passing touchdowns in a season, is the third quarterback on their roster. I think all three of these guys can be have a real chance to be drafted by the Detroit Lions. I think Malik Willis and Sam Howell have a real opportunity to be drafted in the first round with either the Rams' first overall pick, or if the Lions trade down into the middle of the first round, picking up a lot of top 100 picks, picking up 2-3 more top 100 picks to move down 5, 6, 7 spots in the draft. I think you can see one of those guys being taken by the Detroit Lions anywhere from the 20 range all the way down to like 34 early in the second round. And those two guys, especially in Malik Willis and Sam Howell, have so much talent and have so much upside that even in a quote unquote weaker quarterback class, I think both of them have potential to be starting quarterbacks and star quarterbacks in the NFL. Malik Willis, we've talked about in depth. Again, we look back at the mock offseason, I have the Detroit Lions taking Malik Willis at the 34th overall spot early in the second round because he fell for some reason, but Malik Willis has the most upside in the draft. He is big, strong, athletic, huge arm, great release, really good accuracy, just needs to work on his progressions and his reads a little bit better in the NFL, and I think that's very much something that we're going to see at the Senior Bowl if he's capable of doing. We're going to see how well he transitions between reads, we're going to see how well he reads a defense, and we're going to see how well he works in the Detroit Lions system. Sam Howell, a guy that had a really down 2021 season. But you look back at 2019 when he was a sophomore. You look back at 2020 you look back at 2020 when he was a junior in college. His numbers looked phenomenal. He was a really good quarterback and looked at as one of the best players in this draft class. And at some points was even being talked about as the #1 overall pick in this class. Now, last year, again, he did have a down year, but when you consider the fact that Daz Newsome left, when you consider the fact that, he lost his top 2 wide receivers, his top 2 running backs, and part of his O-line, and was really only left with one true viable wide receiver in the North Carolina offense, and was really left with the scraps of the North Carolina running back room from last year with a really inconsistent, if not even poor offensive line. It's not acceptable, but it's easy to see why Sam Howell might have struggled in the 2021 season with all that talent leaving for the NFL. And obviously on the Lions, he'd have a much better offensive line. He'd have much better weapons. He'd have St. Brown and Josh Reynolds. He'd have probably a free agent wide receiver and a couple more drafted guys. He would have NFL talent around him, not to mention TJ Hockenson and DeAndre Swift to throw to. His weapons would be phenomenal in the NFL. His offensive line would look really good. And Sam Howell, I think, is sneaky athletic, right? At least when I thought of Sam Howell before watching tape on him, you think, or at least I thought, he's a guy that has a really good arm, super strong, super accurate arm, has pretty good ball placement, has a lot of good statistics and a lot of good traits. But the one thing I don't really think about with Sam Howell that is kind of, behind the scenes, but is definitely a big factor of his game is his running ability. He is a really mobile quarterback. He is a strong guy. He is really, really hard to break down. He reminds me of a faster Big Ben, just a guy with a big body. He's, not heavy necessarily, but he's just really strong, really built, and he's a guy that doesn't go down on first contact, which is a trait that is really, really good to have, especially now in the NFL, as somebody that can move, somebody that can get out of the pocket, somebody that can run your offense, one through the air, but also be a contributor on the ground. And I think Sam Howell can do all of those things for the Detroit Lions, and I think deserves to be on the Detroit Lions big board going into this draft. And again, like Malik Willis, we're going to get a really good feel for how he fits in this Detroit Lions offense. Bailey Zappe is the kind of third quarterback of this group, a guy that won't go until probably late day 3, but for a guy that for Western Kentucky broke NCAA records with over 6,000 passing yards and 60 touchdowns. It is something that only Joe Burrow was able to match, and even he could not match the production of Bailey Zappe in college football. Now, obviously, Joe Burrow did it in the SEC. Bailey Zappe did it at Western Kentucky. Conferences are different, competition's different, but the fact remains that an NCAA record is an NCAA record. I think he has potential to be a backup quarterback in the NFL, and I think if we took him with a 5th, a 6th round pick, if we didn't take a quarterback early and we just put him behind Jared Goff, let him sit for a little bit, let him be the long-term developmental guy that, maybe potentially has an opportunity to start in the NFL one day, but at the very worst is a quality backup quarterback, I think he's a guy that could be on the target list as well. Now, Brian Robinson Jr., the running back from Alabama, is also a player that I think should be on the Lions list, and a guy that I think you, as a Lions fan, should look out for this week, or for Senior Bowl week, throughout drills and, of course, the end of week scrimmage. Brian Robinson averaged 5 yards per carry in the SEC throughout his career. He had nearly 3,000 rushing yards and 29 rushing touchdowns. He didn't really get a huge opportunity, didn't get a bulk of the carries until the very end of his career at Alabama, but when he got his chance, when he got his starting role, he took the most, rushing for over 1,000 yards and a lot of touchdowns in 2021. He was a big factor, I believe, set in a college playoff record for rushing yards in a college football semifinal game versus the Cincinnati Bearcats, who had a very good defense going into that game. He's a guy that has proven he can be a bell cow, guy that is pretty strong, breaks a lot of tackles, does not go down easy, doesn't have huge breakaway speed, but is fast enough to get you some big chunk plays and some chunk yards. And I think is a guy that, you're looking for that power back, You're looking for that guy that breaks a lot of tackles. You're looking for your next Jamal Williams, the guy that, isn't going to be a huge 100-yard rusher, 1,000-yard rusher every single year, 100-yard rusher every single game, but a guy that, just can get you that tough, gritty yardage, and a guy that can just, push other players on the roster for that roster spot. Another guy that I think could really fit into this Lions offense is James Cook, the running back from Georgia. And now if the Cook name sounds familiar, it's because his brother Dalvin Cook dices up the Lions each in every season. And although James Cook isn't quite the prospect that Dalvin Cook was, he does show a lot of similar traits. James Cook is very smooth in his transition, looks very good cutting, looks very good on the outside of the pocket, on stretches and tosses and stuff outside of the pocket. You don't really want him running inside the tackles. You want him outside the tackles in space. He's a really good receiver. He's a really good running back. Never went over 1,000 yards, but also was splitting time with, Zamir White, was splitting time with, all the running backs before him. And I think you pair James Cook up with DeAndre Swift. I think they're a really good receiving duo running back, both Georgia guys, both Georgia Bulldogs. That connection is there between the two of them. I don't think DeAndre Swift was there. I guess he was. Because DeAndre Swift's going into his third year in the NFL. That would have mean that he worked with James Cook in the running back room at some point in their career. They reunite there. James Cook brings a really good dynamic playmaker to the backfield, a guy that can rush the ball consistently, a guy that's really good in open space, a guy that, may be biased, but has the upside of course, Dalvin Cook, his brother, who he looks very similar to in the open space and in the open field. And I'm not saying he's going to be Dalvin Cook, but he can be a dynamic weapon for the Detroit Lions in their offense, especially if you pair him with DeAndre Swift in the passing game. Now, James Cook averaged 6.5 yards per carry in his career in the SEC, rushing for 1,503 yards and 14 touchdowns, while also having 67 receptions for 730 yards and 6 more touchdowns through the air. Again, just a dynamic weapon, a guy that can get you production on the ground, a guy that can get you production on the air. And if you go into this offense, right, if you run a set with DeAndre Swift, James Cook, TJ Hawkinson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Craig Reynolds, who are you going to cover? That's 5 legitimate wide receiver type threats, guys that can receive and make big plays through the air. A lot of defenses are not going to have a lot of guys to cover all that receiving talent. And at that point, it's just up to Goff to make the right read, give the ball to the right guy, and let that guy go make a play. Now, another guy that I think is kind of a dark horse player to be on the Lions roster is Jameer Schaefer, the offensive tackle from Georgia. Now, Jameer Schaefer was a all-SEC player. He is a tackle for the University of Georgia, of course, was part of that Georgia offensive line that helped shut out Bama, that helped shut out Michigan in the semifinals. He is a guy that played really well down the stretch, allowed the fewest pressures in the SEC. And I know the Detroit Lions have a tackle duo already, and I'm not expecting Jameer Schaefer to be a starter, but he is a really good offensive lineman. He is a really good SEC product. He's a big guy, really strong, a lot of power for that offensive line. And I think you can put him as your backup tackle, and that makes a really good trio, especially if you want to use him in the way that you used Matt Nelson a year ago, as kind of that 6th offensive lineman, 3rd tight end, a guy that comes in on running downs, and a guy that can go in motion, a guy that can, move around and basically set where you want to run, and you get an extra offensive lineman with a lot of power and a lot of size to move the football in the running game. I think he could be a late round addition for the Detroit Lions as well. You got DeMarco Jackson, the linebacker from Appalachian State. He's a super productive player in the Sun Belt. I know it's not a Power 5 conference, but there's a reason he is at the Senior Bowl. And it's because he played in a lower conference. It's because he played in a Group of 5. He played in the Sun Belt, and he wasn't, put on national television all that often, but he was incredibly productive at Appalachian State. You look at his statistics over the last 4 years of him at collegiate football, and they look just about as good as anybody you're going to find at the collegiate level. Right, DeMarco Jackson has over 291 tackles, 35 tackles for loss, 11.5 sacks, 3 interceptions, 15 pass defended, a forced fumble, and a fumble recovery in his 4 years. He's got pretty good size for a linebacker, and he's not like the biggest or strongest or fastest linebacker that you're going to find in the draft, but he is productive. And if you can get him late in the 5th, the 6th, even the 7th round of this NFL draft, he is going to be a steal and can bulk up your linebacking core and add him to guys like, Alex Anzalone, Jalen Reeves-Maybin, Derek Barnes, and hopefully a free agent or two to join the mix. Now, linebacker, in my opinion, is actually a really big positional group here at the Senior Bowl, especially for the Detroit Lions. And I want to talk about two more linebackers that I think can be really impactful and be on the Lions draft board by the end of the Senior Bowl. Now, the second linebacker I really wanted to talk about was Damone Clark, the linebacker from LSU. Now, Damone Clark, again, a 4-year player for the LSU Tigers, totaled 249 tackles, 23 tackles for loss, 10 sacks, an interception, 3 passes defended, 2 forced fumbles, and a fumble recovery. A guy that did play at a Power 5 school, a guy that did produce at a Power 5 school. And, of course, you look at the history of LSU linebackers, with Devin White being the most recent, the history looks pretty solid. A guy that, again, I don't think will go very high, but a guy that is a late round pick, could be your next Derek Barnes, could be your next, good depth piece that you get late on day 3. And then you have a linebacker from Nebraska of the name of JoJo Domain, played, again, linebacker at Nebraska. Not the biggest guy, but a very productive guy at a Power 5 school in the Big Ten. Over his 4 years, he has 208 tackles, 26.5 tackles for loss, 5.5 sacks, 3 interceptions, 15 passes defended, 9 forced fumbles, and 3 fumble recoveries. He forced a lot of turnovers for the Cornhusker defense over the past couple of years, and I know Nebraska hasn't been the NFL, and I know Nebraska hasn't been the Big Ten college football powerhouse that they were in, obviously when they were a really good team. They're not the same powerhouse. They're not the same Big Ten or national championship threat that they used to be, but they did still have some productive talent, and JoJo Domain was one of their best players that they can send to the NFL. Now, looking at the defensive line, there wasn't a lot of defensive linemen that I really wanted to touch on, but Fidarian Mathis, the defensive tackle from Alabama, is one of the guys that Dan Campbell gets the pleasure of coaching. And again, if you watch the mock offseason, you will know that I have very high opinions on Fidarian Mathis, especially in his last year for the Crimson Tide. Now, Fidarian Mathis is coming off an injury in the national championship, but should be healthy by the Senior Bowl, and the Dan Campbell-led Detroit Lions should get a really good look at Fidarian Mathis to see if he is the guy they want to add to their defensive line. Now, as I said, the DBs are yet to be announced, but they do have some really good talent coming in, or at least some really good talent that has been invited to the Senior Bowl. Mainly Kobe Bryant, the cornerback from Cincinnati, the guy that, again, was I believe, won the Jim Thorpe Award this year in college football for being the nation's best defensive back. You have JT Wiz, the safety from Baylor that we've talked about before, and you have Cortez Davis, who led the nations in pass defense. The Lions will likely get at least one of these players, and they should, if they want to, or they could, if they want to, target a DB and a cornerback in this year's draft. So with all that being said, that is really your Senior Bowl roster. Again, I will update you when the cornerback position comes out. I will update you when the DBs actually get announced for the Detroit Lions and for the New York Jets. But with that being said, those are the big names of the Senior Bowl. Those are the guys that if you're a Lions fan, you're looking at, the Senior Bowl, you're watching the practices, the games, the scrimmages, the drills. Those are the guys you need to watch out for. In my opinion, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep a huge eye on the quarterbacks. I'm going to keep a huge eye on the linebackers, and, every once in a while checking on the running backs. So I think James Cook could be a really good option for the Detroit Lions. But with all that being said, that is all I have for you guys today. Again, just wanted to update you on some of the prospects that you can get a first-hand look at here in the Senior Bowl down in Mobile, Alabama, as the Detroit Lions get another opportunity to coach and host the Senior Bowl like they did once under Matt Patricia. Worked out pretty good for him. Hopefully, Dan Campbell, Brad Holmes, and the rest of this new look Lions team can take even more advantage of their opportunity and get some late round studs and get some really good players to build off of in this year's draft. So with all that being said, that's all I got for you guys today. Thank you all so very much for watching. Let me know your favorite prospect from the Senior Bowl down in the comments below, and let me know the player you are most excited to watch in the Senior Bowl if you are going to watch it at all. But with all that being said, that's all I got for you guys today. Thank you all so very much for watching, and until next time, and as always, go Lions!